Maya pressed her hands together as she walked into the small cafe on a cool evening. The soft golden lights above gave the place a warm glow, and the air was filled with the smell of roasted coffee beans and fresh pastries. Her heart was beating fast. It had been a long time since she had agreed to meet someone new, and she still wasn't sure if this was a good idea. Her best friend, Rena, had arranged the blind date. "You need to try," Rena had told her over the phone. "You can't keep working all the time and hiding in your own little world. Maybe this man will surprise you." Maya wasn't convinced, but she wanted to prove to herself that she could at least try. She wore a simple blue dress with a white scarf. Her long black hair was loose over her shoulders. She hadn't dressed up too much, but she looked graceful in her own quiet way. Still, she felt nervous, like every eye in the cafe might turn to her. Holding her phone, she checked the message again. "His name is Daniel. He said he will be at a table near the window." Maya's eyes scanned the cafe. Near the window sat a man, tall and composed, dressed in a neat dark suit. He had a book open in front of him, and he seemed completely absorbed in reading. Something about him looked different from the rest of the people there. While others laughed, scrolled on their phones, or talked loudly, this man appeared calm, as if the world around him did not hurry him at all. Her throat tightened. Could this be Daniel? He didn't look like someone she would meet on a blind date. He seemed more like the kind of person who belonged in a big office or perhaps in a newspaper article about successful people. But she had no choice except to ask. She walked closer, her steps small, her palms sweaty. When she finally reached his table, she leaned forward slightly and said in a quiet voice, "Are you Daniel?" The man lifted his head. His eyes were deep brown, warm yet observant. For a moment, Maya forgot her nervousness. There was something about the way he looked at her, as if he was giving her his full attention, even though she was just a stranger. A gentle smile touched his lips. "I'm not Daniel," he said calmly, his voice smooth and kind. "But you seem like you're waiting for someone. Would you like to sit here instead of standing?" Maya felt her face heat with embarrassment. She had clearly sat at the wrong table. The right thing would be to apologize and walk away, but something inside her stopped her. Maybe it was the kindness in his tone, maybe the patience in his eyes, but she nodded and slowly pulled out the chair across from him. "My name is Maya," she said softly, hoping she didn't sound too awkward. "Adrian," the man replied, closing his book and placing it aside. His movements were calm, without rush. "It's nice to meet you, Maya." She gave a small smile and looked down at the table for a moment. She felt silly for sitting here, but at the same time, she didn't want to leave. Something about his presence was strangely comforting, as though she had been carrying a heavy weight and suddenly found a place to rest. They began to talk. At first, it was simple, light conversation about the weather, the cafe, the book he was reading. But slowly, it became deeper. Adrian asked questions that made her think, questions that made her feel seen. He didn't talk about himself much, but whenever he did, he spoke with sincerity. What Maya didn't know was that Adrian was no ordinary man. He was one of the wealthiest businessmen in the city, a billionaire whose face often appeared in newspapers and magazines. But Adrian had grown tired of the attention, the false smiles, and the people who approached him only for his money or power. Tonight, he had come to this cafe not as the man everyone knew, but simply as Adrian, a man searching quietly for something real. And now, across from him, sat Maya, who had arrived at his table purely by mistake. Yet, her mistake didn't feel like one. To him, it felt like the beginning of something unexpected. Maya had no idea that her blind date with Daniel was still waiting somewhere else in the cafe. She had no idea that she had walked into a story that would change her life forever. All she knew was that she had sat at the wrong table, and yet, somehow, it didn't feel wrong at all. Maya sat across from Adrian, still unsure if she had made a mistake by sitting down. The man she was supposed to meet, Daniel, was probably waiting somewhere else in the cafe. But strangely, her heart wasn't pushing her to leave. Instead, it felt steady, almost curious. Adrian watched her with quiet interest. He was used to people looking at him with a kind of expectation, as if they wanted something. But Maya's eyes were different. They were cautious, shy, but not calculating. She didn't seem to know who he was, and that was refreshing. "So, you were supposed to meet someone else?" Adrian asked, his voice light, as though he didn't want to make her uncomfortable. "Yes," Maya admitted, giving a nervous smile. "My friend set up a blind date for me. I thought you were him, but clearly, I was wrong." Adrian chuckled softly. "Well, then this is a happy accident for me." Her cheeks warmed. "Why do you say that?" "Because," he leaned slightly forward, his eyes steady on hers, "I rarely get the chance to meet someone new in a simple way like this. No introductions, no expectations, just two strangers at a cafe." Maya lowered her gaze, tracing the edge of her cup with her finger. His words touched something inside her. She often felt unseen, like people didn't care enough to know her beyond her job or her quiet habits. But here was a man, a stranger, who made her feel as though her presence mattered. For a while, they spoke about ordinary things: the taste of coffee, favorite books, little pieces of daily life. Yet, the ordinary felt extraordinary in that moment. Adrian's way of listening made every word seem valuable. "You read a lot?" she asked, noticing the book he had set aside. "I try to," he replied. "Books remind me that there is always more to learn, no matter how much we think we already know." "That's true," Maya said softly. "I read when I feel lonely. Somehow, the words keep me company." Adrian studied her face. There was a quiet sadness behind her smile, the kind that only someone who had known long silences could carry. He wanted to ask more, but he didn't want to seem intrusive. Instead, he shared something of his own. "Sometimes," he said, "I find myself surrounded by people but still feel alone. That's when books become my escape." Their eyes met for a moment, and an invisible thread seemed to connect them. Two strangers, both familiar with loneliness, sitting across from each other as if fate had arranged it. Maya laughed lightly, breaking the silence. "This is funny, isn't it? I came here to meet someone else, but instead, I'm talking to you like I've known you for years." Adrian's lips curved into a genuine smile. "Some meetings are planned, and some are meant to surprise us. I think this one belongs to the second kind." Her heart gave a small flutter. She couldn't understand why, but his words stayed with her. Still, part of her mind reminded her of Daniel, the man she was actually supposed to meet. She glanced around the cafe, wondering if he was there, waiting, maybe feeling ignored. Guilt pricked her, but at the same time, leaving this conversation with Adrian felt almost impossible. Adrian noticed her glance and asked gently, "Are you worried about your blind date?" Maya hesitated. Honesty won over politeness. "A little, but at the same time, I feel like I'm exactly where I should be right now." Something stirred in Adrian's chest at those words. For years, he had met people who wanted to sit with him because of his status, his wealth, his influence. But Maya didn't know any of that. She was here, speaking from her heart, not because of who he was in the world, but because of who he was in this moment. The thought filled him with warmth. A waiter came by, and Adrian ordered coffee for both of them. When the cups arrived, Maya wrapped her hands around hers, letting the warmth seep into her fingers. "Do you come here often?" she asked. "Sometimes," Adrian replied. "This place is simple. No one looks too closely, and I can just sit quietly." She tilted her head, curious. That sounds like someone who has too many eyes on him outside this cafe. Adrian smiled faintly but didn't answer directly. He wasn't ready to tell her who he was. Not yet. He wanted this fragile, genuine connection to last a little longer before the truth complicated it. Instead, he asked, "And what about you? What brought you here, other than this blind date?" Maya sighed softly. "I think I was just trying to prove to myself that I can step out of my comfort zone. I spend so much of my life working and helping my family that I sometimes forget I'm supposed to live for myself too." Adrian nodded slowly. He respected that honesty. "That's brave, Maya. Many people stay inside their comfort zones their whole lives. The fact that you came here today already says a lot about your strength." His words settled over her like a soft blanket. No one had ever said that to her before. As the evening moved on, their conversation grew deeper. They spoke of dreams, fears, and little hopes that seemed too small to share with the world but too important to ignore. And though Daniel still sat somewhere else in the cafe, waiting for a woman who never arrived, Maya and Adrian were lost in their own world, two strangers, meeting by mistake, yet feeling as though destiny had guided every step. The evening air outside the cafe grew cooler as time passed, but inside, the warmth of conversation between Maya and Adrian continued to grow. They were two strangers who had started with small talk, yet now their words carried weight, weaving invisible threads between their hearts. Maya could not understand why it felt so easy to speak with him. Normally, she struggled with strangers, choosing silence over conversation. But with Adrian, she found herself opening up as though he had created a safe space where her words mattered. Still, in the back of her mind, the reminder of her original blind date lingered. Daniel. She had promised Rena she would meet him. At some point, she knew she would have to stand up, excuse herself, and at least see if he was there. As if reading her thoughts, Adrian asked gently, "Do you feel bad that your blind date might still be waiting?" Maya sighed, guilt settling over her. "Yes. I do. It's unfair. He doesn't even know me yet, and I've already left him waiting." Adrian nodded thoughtfully. "Then maybe you should go and check. I don't want to keep you from something important." His tone was kind, but there was a softness in his eyes that told a different story. He didn't want her to go, not yet. Maya hesitated. She looked at him carefully, noticing again the calm strength in his face. He wasn't just being polite. He was sincere. And in that moment, she realized something: she wanted to stay. Shaking her head lightly, she said, "I think, maybe this table was meant for me after all." Adrian's lips curved into a slow smile, though his heart gave a small, unexplainable ache. He knew she didn't understand who he really was. She was choosing to stay without knowing his name carried weight beyond this cafe. For once, someone had chosen him, not the billionaire, not the public figure, but simply Adrian. They continued to talk, the cafe slowly emptying as the night grew late. The waiter began wiping down tables, and the background hum of voices faded. Yet, neither of them noticed the time passing. Meanwhile, across the room, Daniel finally checked his watch for the third time. He had been waiting for over an hour, sipping water nervously, scanning faces that entered the cafe. Maya never came to him. With disappointment heavy in his chest, he stood up and left quietly. Maya never even knew. When the waiter finally approached Adrian and Maya's table, he said softly, "We'll be closing in a few minutes." Maya blinked, surprised. "Already? I didn't even notice the time." Adrian chuckled. "Neither did I. That must mean it was a good conversation." They both stood, and for a moment, neither knew how to end the evening. The air outside the cafe was cooler than before, a soft breeze brushing past them. Maya hugged her scarf closer around her shoulders. "Thank you," she said, her voice quiet but sincere. for listening. For this whole evening. It was unexpected, but it felt different. Adrian looked at her, his expression gentle yet unreadable. Thank you, Maya. You made tonight feel less lonely. They walked slowly toward the corner where the street lights cast a warm glow. Maya stopped there, unsure what to do next. She didn't want to ask for his number, she was too shy, and part of her feared it would seem forward. She assumed this might be the last time she saw him. A fleeting memory of a chance encounter. But Adrian, watching her hesitate, felt the same tug in his heart. He wanted to see her again, but he also wanted it to be natural, not forced. So instead of pushing, he said simply, maybe fate has a way of bringing people together more than once. If this was truly meant to happen, it won't end here. Maya's chest tightened at his words. Something about the way he said it gave her hope. She nodded softly. Maybe you're right. For a brief moment, they stood there in silence, looking at each other as though trying to memorize the details, the shape of a smile, the depth of a gaze, the warmth of a presence. Then, with a quiet goodbye, Maya turned and walked down the street. Adrian stayed there for a while, watching until she disappeared into the distance. A part of him wanted to follow, to ask for her contact, to make sure this moment didn't slip away. But he stopped himself. If this connection was real, he believed it would return. Inside her small apartment later that night, Maya sat by the window, thinking about him. She should have been upset about missing her blind date, but she wasn't. Instead, her heart carried the memory of a stranger named Adrian who had made her feel seen, heard, and valued. She whispered softly to herself, almost like a secret prayer, I hope I see him again. At the same time, in his quiet penthouse far above the city lights, Adrian stood by his own window. Despite all the wealth and success around him, he had often felt empty. But tonight, for the first time in years, his heart was not heavy. He closed his eyes and whispered, please, let me meet her again. Neither knew how or when, but both carried the same hope that this wrong table, this strange accident, was actually the beginning of something far more meaningful. Days passed after that night at the cafe, but Maya could not push the memory of Adrian from her mind. She tried to focus on her daily routine, her office work, her responsibilities at home, and her quiet evenings reading by the window, but every so often, her thoughts returned to him. The way he listened, the warmth in his smile, the comfort in his presence. It was strange. She had met him only once, and yet it felt as if she had known him much longer. Her best friend Rena, however, was not pleased when she learned what had happened. You mean to tell me you never even met Daniel? Rena exclaimed over the phone. Maya, I arranged that blind date for you, and you completely ignored him. Maya bit her lip. I didn't ignore him on purpose. I sat at the wrong table, and then I just stayed there. Rena was silent for a moment, then sighed loudly. Only you would do something like this. But, was it worth it? Maya hesitated, then whispered, yes. It was. Rena's voice softened. Then maybe fate wanted it that way. Meanwhile, Adrian was living a very different life, though his thoughts were no less occupied. His days were filled with meetings, phone calls, and endless decisions. The world saw him as a powerful man with everything anyone could want: wealth, influence, respect. Yet behind all the success, he carried a quiet emptiness. But after meeting Maya, that emptiness didn't feel so heavy anymore. He found himself remembering the gentleness of her voice, the honesty in her words. She hadn't treated him like a man of status. She hadn't even known who he was. And that made her unforgettable. One Saturday morning, fate decided to surprise them again. Maya had gone to the city library, one of her favorite places. The tall shelves, the quiet air, the smell of books, it felt like home to her. She walked slowly through the aisles, looking for a new novel to borrow. Her hands brushed against the spines of books until she found one that caught her eye. As she reached for it, another hand touched the same book. Surprised, she turned her head and her heart nearly stopped. It was Adrian. For a moment, they both froze, their eyes meeting in disbelief. Then, slowly, Adrian's lips curved into a smile. Seems like fate really does enjoy these accidents. Maya's breath caught in her chest. Adrian, they both let out a soft laugh, the kind that comes when nerves mix with happiness. Standing there in the quiet library aisle, it felt almost magical. I didn't think I would see you again, Maya admitted, her voice low. Neither did I, Adrian replied. But I hoped. They sat together at a small table near the window, books lying forgotten in front of them. The library was quiet, with only the soft turning of pages and the distant sound of footsteps echoing. Maya looked at him carefully. You said something last time, about fate bringing people together more than once. Maybe you were right. Adrian nodded. I like to believe that some connections are too strong to be left to chance. They find their way back. They spoke again, just as they had at the cafe. The conversation flowed naturally, as though no time had passed. Maya found herself telling him about her love for stories, how books gave her courage to face life when it felt too heavy. Adrian listened intently, his heart softening more with every word. In return, he shared pieces of himself, not about his wealth or his world of business, but about his struggles with loneliness, about how people often saw only what he had and not who he was. Maya looked at him with quiet sympathy. That must feel empty sometimes. It does, Adrian admitted. But tonight, sitting here with you, it doesn't. Her chest tightened at his honesty. She realized then that beneath his calm and strong appearance, he carried a heart that longed for the same thing hers did, someone to truly see and accept him. Hours passed like minutes. The afternoon sun shifted, and the light through the window grew softer, painting the room in golden shades. Neither of them noticed the time, lost in the comfort of each other's presence. When the librarian finally announced that the library would close soon, Maya sighed. Time runs too fast when I talk to you. Adrian smiled gently. Then perhaps we shouldn't wait for fate the next time. Perhaps we should make sure we meet again. Her heart skipped. She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. I'd like that. For the first time, they exchanged numbers. Maya wrote hers on a small slip of paper and slid it across the table. Adrian placed it carefully in his pocket, as if it were something precious. As they walked out of the library together, the evening breeze greeted them. This time, there was no hesitation, no uncertainty about whether they would meet again. Both of them knew this was not just an accident anymore. It was the beginning of something real. Maya smiled to herself as she walked home. For years, her life had been ordinary, predictable, quiet. But now, with every step, her heart carried a spark of hope. And Adrian, watching her from a distance as she disappeared down the street, felt the same hope. For the first time in a long time, his wealth and success didn't matter. What mattered was the chance to know her better, to hold on to the rare feeling of being seen as just a man, not a billionaire. It had started with the wrong table. But perhaps, just perhaps, it was the right destiny. The days after their second meeting passed with a different kind of warmth for both Maya and Adrian. Their lives, which once felt so separate, now slowly began to blend through small moments, calls, messages, and the quiet comfort of knowing someone was waiting at the other end. Maya would wake up early for work and often find a simple good morning message from Adrian on her phone. It was never long or overly grand, but it carried sincerity that made her smile before her day even started. Adrian, on the other hand, found himself looking forward to her replies more than he had ever looked forward to business deals or contracts. Her words were ordinary, yet they touched him deeply because they were honest. Soon, Their conversations moved from phone calls to shared moments in person. They met at small cafes, quiet parks, and once even at a street food stall where Maya insisted he try her favorite snack. Adrian laughed that night, not because of the food itself, but because he hadn't done something so simple in years. "This is what real life feels like," he said softly, watching her enjoy her meal with bright eyes. Maya looked at him curiously. "What do you mean?" He smiled faintly. "I mean the small things. The things that money can't buy. Most of my life has been filled with the big things: grand dinners, endless meetings, expensive events. But sitting here with you, eating something simple, I feel happier than I did in all those big rooms." His words touched her, though she didn't fully understand the weight behind them. She still didn't know who he truly was. To her, Adrian was just a kind man who listened and shared his heart. And that was enough. One evening, as they walked by the river, the city lights reflecting on the water, Maya spoke of her dreams. "I've always wanted to travel," she admitted softly. "Not far, not around the whole world, but just to places where I can sit by the sea or walk through a new city. I want to see more than the small circle I live in." Adrian listened carefully, his hands tucked in his pockets. "And what stops you?" She gave a small laugh, almost embarrassed. "Responsibilities. Work. Money. Life is not that simple." He wanted to tell her that for him, it was simple. He could take her anywhere she wished, show her the world in a way she had never imagined. But he stayed silent. If he revealed that part of himself, would it change the way she looked at him? Would the honesty of her feelings vanish, replaced by awe or distance? So instead, he said gently, "One day, you will. Dreams don't always stay locked away forever." Her eyes softened. She liked that he believed in her, even when she wasn't sure she believed in herself. Over time, people around Maya began to notice the change in her. Rena, who had always pushed her to step out of her shell, was the first to see it. "You're glowing," Rena teased one evening as they sat together. "Don't deny it. You've met someone, haven't you?" Maya tried to hide her smile but failed. "Maybe." Rena leaned forward eagerly. "Who is he? Tell me everything." But Maya didn't tell her much. It wasn't because she didn't trust Rena, but because some feelings were too new, too delicate to share. She wanted to keep Adrian close to her heart for now, like a secret only she could treasure. Adrian, too, was changing. His assistants noticed he seemed calmer, less burdened, even during long meetings. His closest friend in the business world teased him once. "You look different, Adrian." "What's her name?" Adrian only smiled and didn't answer. He wasn't ready to explain Maya to a world that might not understand her simplicity, her quiet strength. Yet, even as their bond grew stronger, a shadow of truth remained between them. Maya didn't know about his wealth or his public identity. Adrian lived with the quiet fear that when she did find out, it might create a distance he couldn't bridge. One evening, after they had spent hours at a quiet park, Maya looked at him seriously. "You know, Adrian, sometimes I feel like you hide parts of yourself. Like there's more to you than you tell me." Her words made his chest tighten. She was right, and he knew it. He wanted to tell her everything, to trust her completely. But the fear of losing her kept him silent. Instead, he gave a small smile. "Maybe everyone has pieces of themselves they reveal slowly. Perhaps I'm still learning how to share mine." Maya looked at him for a long moment, then nodded gently. "That's fair. I'll wait." Her patience warmed him. She wasn't demanding answers, only offering trust. That made her even more precious in his eyes. As the days turned into weeks, their connection deepened in ways words could barely describe. Each moment felt like a step towards something bigger, something neither of them had planned but both of them needed. But behind every step forward, Adrian carried the weight of the truth he had yet to share. And Maya carried the quiet hope that whatever he was holding back, it wouldn't be something that broke the fragile bond they had built. What began with a mistake at a wrong table was now becoming something neither of them could imagine their lives without. The bond between Maya and Adrian grew stronger with every passing day. Their meetings, once accidental, had now become something both of them looked forward to. Every call, every message, and every shared laugh built a quiet rhythm between their hearts. Yet, beneath the happiness, Adrian carried a secret that pressed heavily on him. Maya still did not know who he really was. To her, he was a kind man with gentle eyes, someone who listened and made her feel valued. But in reality, he was Adrian Blake, the billionaire businessman whose name appeared in newspapers and whose face was familiar on magazine covers. For a while, Adrian had enjoyed the peace of being just himself with her. She didn't treat him like a man of wealth or influence, and that gave him freedom he hadn't felt in years. But the longer he hid the truth, the more difficult it became. He feared that when Maya finally discovered it, she might feel betrayed. One afternoon, fate began to push the truth closer. Maya and Adrian were sitting together at a quiet cafe near the city center. It was a small place, away from the crowd, chosen by Adrian because it offered privacy. They were sharing a slice of cake, talking about ordinary things, when Maya noticed something unusual. A man at a nearby table kept glancing at Adrian with wide eyes. After a few minutes, he even whispered something excitedly to his friend, pointing subtly in Adrian's direction. Adrian noticed it too and shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Do you know him?" Maya asked curiously. Adrian hesitated, then shook his head. "Not personally." But the truth was clear, the man had recognized him. A few minutes later, as they were leaving the cafe, a young woman hurried up with her phone in hand. "Excuse me," she said breathlessly, her eyes shining. "Are you Adrian Blake?" Maya froze, the name striking her like a sudden wind. She turned sharply toward Adrian, waiting for his reply. Adrian's jaw tightened slightly, but he gave a polite nod. "Yes. Please, no photos right now." The woman smiled apologetically and backed away. Adrian took Maya's hand gently and guided her out of the cafe before more attention could follow. Outside, the world seemed quieter, but Maya's heart was not. She pulled her hand back, staring at him with confusion. "Adrian Blake? The Adrian Blake? The billionaire everyone talks about?" He sighed, knowing the moment he feared had finally come. "Yes, Maya. That's me." For a long moment, she said nothing. Her thoughts were a storm, memories of news articles, stories on TV, headlines about a man whose world seemed far away from hers. And now she realized that man had been sitting across from her all this time, hiding his true identity. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked finally, her voice quiet but heavy. Adrian looked at her, his eyes filled with sincerity. "Because I wanted you to know me as a person, not as a name, not as a fortune. All my life, people have looked at me for what I have, not who I am. But with you, you didn't know, and it felt real. I didn't want to lose that." Maya's chest tightened. She understood his fear, but the weight of his silence hurt too. "But don't you see? By hiding it, you've made me feel like you didn't trust me with the truth." Her words cut deep because they were true. Adrian had trusted her with his heart, yet he hadn't trusted her with his name. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I never meant to hurt you. I didn't want to scare you away." Maya looked away, her thoughts tangled. She remembered every moment they had shared, the laughter, the kindness, the comfort. None of that had been false. Yet now, a wall stood between them. She was just an ordinary woman, and he was someone the world watched closely. "Adrian," she whispered, almost to herself, "our worlds are so different. I don't even know where I fit into yours. He stepped closer, his voice steady but filled with emotion. You fit exactly where you already are beside me. I don't care about the differences. I don't care about the noise of the world. What matters to me is how I feel when I'm with you. Her heart trembled at his words, but doubt still lingered. She needed time, space to think, to decide if she could walk into a world that seemed so far from her own. I need to go, she said quietly, stepping back. Adrian's chest ached, but he didn't stop her. I'll wait, he whispered. No matter how long it takes, Maya, I'll wait. That night, Maya lay awake, staring at the ceiling of her small room. Her heart was torn. She had wanted something real, and with Adrian, she had found it. Yet, the truth of who he was now made everything feel uncertain. Could she ever truly belong in his world? Meanwhile, Adrian stood on the balcony of his penthouse, looking down at the glittering city lights. For years, the view had only reminded him of his loneliness. But tonight, it reminded him of her, the woman who had walked into his life by mistake and changed everything. He whispered to the night sky, as though sending his words to her, please don't let this be the end. The city felt different that morning. The sun rose slowly over the skyline, spilling golden light onto the streets below. Maya walked along the quiet road near her apartment, her thoughts heavy yet determined. Last night's revelation had stayed with her, the truth about Adrian's identity. She loved him, of that she was certain. But the weight of his world pressed on her. Could she belong in a life filled with wealth, fame, and public attention? Could she trust him after the secrecy? Her heart whispered yes, but her mind wavered. Meanwhile, Adrian waited. He had tried calling, messaging, even leaving a small note at her apartment the night before. Each attempt went unanswered. He respected her space, but every moment apart felt longer than a lifetime. Finally, unable to wait any longer, Adrian decided to go to the park where they had spent hours together weeks ago. He prayed that she would come there, even if just to think. Maya arrived at the park in the late morning. The soft rustling of leaves, the distant laughter of children, and the warm sunlight gave her a sense of calm. She found the bench where they had once sat together and allowed herself to breathe. And there he was, Adrian, standing at the edge of the path, looking out over the water. His hands were in his pockets, his posture tense yet patient. When he noticed her, a small smile appeared on his face, though his eyes carried hope and fear at the same time. Maya approached slowly. Each step felt heavy, but her heart told her to continue. Adrian, she said softly, stopping a few feet away. He turned fully, relief washing over his face. Maya, he said, his voice gentle. I've waited to see you. She hesitated, then looked at him directly. I needed time to think. I wanted to understand, if I could really step into your world and still be myself. Adrian nodded slowly. I understand. I never wanted to pressure you. All I want is for you to be happy, with me or without me. But if you choose to stay, I promise you, it will never be for the wrong reasons. Maya's chest tightened. His honesty, his patience, his unwavering care, everything about him was real. She realized that no matter how different their worlds seemed, they had built something rare and precious, trust and understanding. I won't lie, she admitted. It scares me. Your world, it's so far from mine. But when I'm with you, I feel home. I've never felt that way before. Adrian took a careful step forward. Then home is where we are together. I don't need to show you my wealth or my status. I only need to be with you. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. The fear she had carried melted slowly in the warmth of his words. She realized that love was not about the world around them, it was about what they created together. I choose to try, she whispered. I choose us. Relief and joy flooded Adrian's face. He reached out and gently held her hands, letting the warmth of their touch speak the words his heart had been holding. "Thank you, Maya. You have no idea how long I've waited to hear that." They sat together on the bench, watching the sunlight dance on the water. For a moment, the world beyond the park, the headlines, the wealth, the noise didn't exist. All that mattered was them, together, two hearts that had found each other against all odds. Adrian spoke softly, almost as if making a promise. "I'll never ask you to change. I'll never let you feel like you don't belong. We'll face everything together, as equals, as partners." Maya smiled, feeling a sense of peace she had never known before. "And I'll never let go," she said, her voice firm with certainty. "We'll face it together." Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day. Maya learned about Adrian's world not as a daunting, impossible place, but as a part of his life she could understand and share. Adrian, in turn, learned from Maya how simple moments, honesty, and genuine care could bring light into even the busiest, loneliest days. Eventually, their story, which had begun with the wrong table and an accidental meeting, became a tale of love built on trust, patience, and courage. Friends and family noticed the change in both of them, the calm in Adrian, the confidence in Maya, the joy that seemed to surround them wherever they went. One evening, under the soft glow of the city lights by the river, Adrian turned to Maya and said, "Do you remember that night at the cafe? The wrong table." Maya laughed softly. "How could I forget? That mistake led to everything." Adrian smiled and held her close. "I believe that sometimes, mistakes are just fate in disguise." Maya rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "Then I'm glad I made that mistake," she whispered. And as the city lights reflected in the water, they knew this was only the beginning of their journey. Two worlds, once distant, had come together not through wealth or fame, but through a chance encounter, courage, and a love that neither would let go. The wrong table had led them to the right person. And that was how destiny, quietly and gently, found its way.